Honest question. Have you ever said or done something that provoked a pretty strong reaction from another person? Maybe one that felt a little bit like an overreaction, or maybe just kind of stung a little? Well, this is what I want to talk about today. And the fact that other people's reactions to you are often more about them than they are about you. And once we understand that, it can actually help us out quite a bit. And I'm going to give you some practical tips that you can use if somebody's having a strong reaction to something that you said or did. If you are new here, I am Kat from My Happy Insides, and I help people uncover the hidden reasons they're getting stuck so they can break free and start thriving. Now, I bring up this topic today because, well, frankly, there's a lot of strong reactions going on right now, and it really is an important tool to understand that people bring their own baggage to the table. We all have our own experiences, our own beliefs, our own history that actually does form our reactions. And a lot of it's going on under the surface. We don't even realize it's happening. But if we can stop and take a look at how we react, we can see that other people's reactions aren't maybe as personal as we think. Which brings up a great quote that I like from the author Barry Oshry, which is, "Much that seems personal isn't personal." We might take things personally or we feel like it was a personal attack, but in actual fact, the person's reaction had a lot of other stuff going on, and it was really a lot about them. Now, let's be fair. You're part of this equation. If you're doing or saying something that's causing a reaction, you're part of it. And maybe you can reflect back and say, is there something that I could do differently or maybe could say differently? Absolutely, that's within your control, and that's a pretty good habit to look back and see what did I actually do and can I make some changes. But what I don't like to see is when someone just kind of stops themselves from maybe saying anything or doing anything for fear that they're going to keep getting these reactions. They're maybe taking on a little bit too much responsibility when that's not necessarily the case. So what's actually going on? I like to think of it as a mirror being held up. And to make it simpler, let's turn it around and let's look at times that we've had a strong reaction. What are some of the reasons we might have had a pretty strong reaction to something? So first, maybe something you don't like about yourself came up for you. So it's like someone holding up a mirror to yourself and you're seeing a part of yourself you don't like so much. And I'm going to share a personal example in a moment about that. Another thing is that you might witness something or hear something that reminds you you're not where you want to be. So maybe another person is doing something you wish you could do, or they're just going after it and you're not, and you feel bad. And so that comes up for you. Finally, another example could be an existing relationship. Let's say you've got a really tumultuous relationship with a family member, and now you're faced with another person who's not your family member, but wow, do they ever remind you of that family member? So you're actually reacting like you would in that other relationship, even though that's not the person you're talking to. And finally, maybe you're transported back to a past situation. Perhaps it was a situation where you didn't feel so good. Maybe you felt potentially harmed or like you needed to protect yourself. Now all of a sudden you're in this new situation, but all these old feelings are flooding back. And so you react as if you're back in that other situation. So all of these ways are something that can be mirrored back at us, where subconsciously we're bringing all this other stuff to the table. Now, the example that I wanted to share, it's a pretty simple one and kind of benign, but I think it works as a really great example for this. So almost 10 years ago, I decided to start school again while I was working full time. And I had been out of the classroom for a while, and so I was new back to it. And I had one classmate in particular who was asking a lot of questions. And as the term went on, they would raise their hand, and I just would get so irritated with my classmate. And the irony is that for anyone who's ever been in a classroom with me, I was that person a lot. But it's a part of myself I was not so proud of. I mean, I love the fact that I'm curious and that I ask a lot of questions of myself, but there were times where I was pretty clueless in the classroom and would just monopolize the teacher's time and have my hand up every other minute almost, and that's what it felt like. And I could see some of the eye rolls. I could hear some of the sighs. It's like, oh, her hand is up again. Now, I know that that part of me I'm not proud of, because I know and I believe that sometimes you can ask too many questions and you can actually derail the class or whatever setting you are in. And I know that sometimes I wasn't self-aware enough to know which question was appropriate and which could have waited. Or maybe there was another way I could find out that answer and it didn't need to be now. But I wasn't that patient. So when I'm back in the classroom after a while away and I see this happening, I'm actually reacting more to the version of me I don't like than I am to my actual classmate. Now, it took me a while to actually figure that out. So I spent a little while having these reactions. But once I realized it was actually about me, I could let go and soften, and actually didn't bother me anymore. But I only got there because I acknowledged that I was bringing my own baggage to that situation. And unbeknownst to them, they had no idea I was having this reaction at all. Now, let's say you are in a situation where maybe you've said or done something and another person's having a pretty strong reaction to it. What are some things that you can keep in mind that can help you stay centered and maybe not get derailed? First of all, you need to remember their reaction has to do with their experiences and their beliefs that they bring to the table. Every single person has their own lived experience, has their own background that we don't share. We all have different lived experiences. And we have different beliefs about how people should behave and how the world should operate. So we're all coming from different places. And when you can remember that, it can help ease the burden if somebody says or does something that kind of stings a little. Now, the other thing is you have no control over another person's reaction. All you can do is control what you do or say. Now, I do want to point out that if someone does or says something that's inappropriate or not acceptable, you have the choice to remove yourself or to put up a boundary and say this is not okay, but you still don't have any control over how they act. The other thing is another person is entitled to their own reaction. We might not agree with that person's reaction, but it doesn't mean that it's not right. Now, obviously, I want to preface by saying I'm not talking about anything really harmful or maybe a person threatening. Those are not acceptable. And really, for the purpose of this lesson, I am talking about non-threatening, non-harmful reactions. It may harm you in that it kind of hurts, but I'm not talking about anything to do with physical violence or putting someone in danger's way. I just want to make sure that's clear. We are more so talking about a person having a negative reaction to you or maybe an overreaction that can sting and that can feel like it's a personal attack, but it's not always personal. The other thing for you to keep in mind is your own reactions. This is one of the best tools that we can use, is to start paying attention to how we respond to other people. Do you notice your reactions? Are they consistent across certain situations? Like for my example, multiple people who ask too many questions can get me a little bit irritated because it keeps reminding me of something I don't like about myself. So what is the pattern that you are seeing? How are you reacting? And then also ask, what are some of the beliefs that I have that are forming these reactions or these opinions that I have about what's going on? The reason that I want you to start with you first is the more that you understand how your reactions are really framed by your own lived experiences and your own baggage, frankly, the easier it is for you to understand that another person's reaction has more to do with them than it does to do with you.